Capital. Mike Hurst is with us, former U.S. Attorney. Good morning, sir. Merry Christmas to you and family. How's everybody doing?
Hey, good morning, Paul. Everyone's doing great. Yeah, and I know a little something about the orientation. My wife was actually at the state representative orientation last week, so congratulations to Celeste on her victory.
She is, of course, a winner, and now you will have somebody that can boss you around on the state level.
Well, that's been happening for about 30 years now. So, but you can refer to me as the first gentleman now. So
there you go. That's how you made it the 30 years, by the way. So far, so good.
Hey, look, I told everybody we finally ran a Hurst who can actually win an election. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Ooh, how does that feel?
It's great. It's great.
Well, I know that you're involved in a lot of things now and doing some, and you've got to look at the situation when you start talking about the crime. And man, it just seems like in the last several months, the gang activity has just been uncontrollable, not only here in Mississippi, but elsewhere.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Federal Judge Henry Wingate said a few months ago, Jackson has a cancer crime, a crime problem that is cancerous. And, I saw that as U.S. Attorney. I saw that when I was an assistant U.S. Attorney. And unfortunately, with the current leadership we have in the mayor's office in Jackson, that has not only not changed, it's gotten worse because this mayor does not back law enforcement. He does not back prosecuting crime. Unfortunately, what we're seeing across the country, not just in Jackson, but is this movement among social justice warriors to put in these left-wing prosecutors. And what happens is they put criminals first and victims last. And so communities get more unsafe, citizens become victimized, and justice is not being done.
You know what scares me about this? Because it hasn't been that long ago, maybe 7 to 10 years ago, we always heard about George Soros involved in national politics in Congress, House, and Senate. But all of a sudden, it was maybe 7 or 10 years ago, we start hearing about George Soros and local DAs in some of the districts. And people thought, why in the world would he do that? And now you look at it, and you have to say, from New York to Mississippi, he has had an impact with the millions and millions of dollars that he's thrown to some of these DA elections and campaign financing.
Absolutely. And I hate to say it, but it was a brilliant move on his part because it's much cheaper to go into a district attorney's race and flip that race than it is to, say, a United States senator or even a governor's race. And so what has happened is he's gone in on the ground floor and he's directly affecting people's lives because district attorneys, assistant district attorneys, those offices are the ones that are entrusted to protect us as citizens. And when they're not doing their job, when they decide to put a left-wing agenda before the people's safety, we're all in danger. And that's what's happened.
Do you think, you can't climb into his mind, nor would you want to, but why do you think he's doing that? He thinks we will become a better people, or it is to tear down the social structure of this country?
I think it's the latter. I've heard Elon Musk talk about this on podcasts. He truly believes that Soros is an evil individual who sees tearing down the fabric of our country as his goal. And, when you think about it, what other explanation is there, Paul? I mean, how do you justify putting in a prosecutor who doesn't do their job and allows individuals to be victimized while protecting the criminals? I mean, and that's what we're seeing. I was fortunate. I just joined a group called America's Protecting Action Fund, and it's made up of former Attorney General Bill Barr, the Attorneys General of Virginia, Georgia, West Virginia, other like-minded pro-law enforcement entities. And what we're doing is going around the country raising money and putting in pro-law enforcement, pro-justice prosecutors to be elected and to push back on this Soros-funded liberal prosecutor mentality that he's pushing around the country.
I don't think people understand, and we're able to maybe get an idea of how much damage was done from this. And thank God it didn't last that long, but this defund the police movement. And there are some people in some cities still trying to recover.
Yep, absolutely. And you can see how it's failed when folks like Minneapolis are trying to go back to funding the cops. When folks like Portland, all of a sudden The individuals that are pro defund the police are saying, no, we need police. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
And none of these people have ever said, I'm sorry, we screwed up.
Oh, absolutely. That's not in their mindset. No, it's and from the get-go, this whole defund the police movement, I can't comprehend the what's behind that, because if you don't have police, you don't have the individuals who raised their hand and swore to defend and protect. I don't know how you have a society. You have chaos.
Common sense was nowhere in the ingredients that they put in.
No, it was not.
You're talking about George Soros long term, and I understand he's getting old now. His son is, my understanding is his son is as bad or worse than he is, and he's a lot younger. He's going to be around for a long time. And, man, they are just kissing cousins with the Clintons and the Obamas and people like that, which is a strange thing to say, but they are good friends one way or the other. But if you want to look at his long-term success, and I remember 20, 30 years ago bringing this guy's name up and saying that would you believe this guy's putting money in the United States of America because he wants to legalize marijuana. And 20 or 30 years ago when you said this, you would think this would never happen.
Right. And look where we are now.
And look where we are now.
That's right. And I think
and did he do that to make us a better country?
No. And I think we have the same mindset that he is pushing these left-wing prosecutors to do the same thing. Breaks down the structure of our society. If you had people willing to work with you, whether it's in the city of Jackson or Memphis, Memphis is bringing down feds now, trying to get some ideas. And I don't
Isn't that ironic?
I don't know why. Why in the world would you need? Don't you know how to solve this crime? Just 2 or 3 things that they could do immediately that's doable, and that would help the crime situation out.
Yeah, it's so ironic because when I was U.S. Attorney, we put in this thing called Project Eject, and it was amazing thought, Paul. What we would do is enforce the laws. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, we would arrest individuals who broke the laws. We would bring them into the court. We would detain them. We would prosecute them, and we'd make sure they'd go to prison. I mean, this is mind-blowing, isn't it? But what we found in Jackson was after about 2 or 3 years of success, where we actually saw the violent crime rates going down, the Jackson mayor decided he didn't want any part of it anymore, started pulling back JPD. The last year I was there, I think it was 2020, by July of 2020, it was reported that we had 54 carjackings. Carjackings are a federal crime. We told JPD we would take every single carjacking case you have. And by July 2020, there was 54 reported carjackings. 0 had been brought to the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute. So I tell you that because in 2020, I also volunteered or offered to bring down about 50, 60, 70 federal law enforcement agents from around the country. The Department of Justice had this program called Operation Legend that they were doing in Memphis, that they were doing in Kansas City, all these democratically run cities who had crime problems, and I offered to bring it to the city of Jackson. Everyone on the city council, from Kenny Stokes to, I think DeKeither or Aaron Banks, they were all in support of this, but the mayor, Chokwe Lumumba, was opposed to it. And you know why, Paul? He said he did not want Donald Trump militarizing his city while his individuals, his citizens suffered at the hands of criminals. And now look at us. We're in the Biden administration, and all these Democratic mayors want all the federal help they can get.
And the same thing can be said as far as the brouhaha over the judges, elective versus appointive. I mean, if I'm a mayor and I need some help out there, I would say, I don't care how you do it, just do it.
Right.
Get it done. But it was turf battle, more so than would this dear old lady on Oak Street have more protection, or would she can't even sit out on her porch anymore from gunfire. And that was way down the list of consideration.
Right.
The major consideration was, did we have evil Republicans or anybody else coming in to try to control our city? And then you start throwing the race card, and then it falls together, and you can't put it back.
Yeah, and that's what's sad is they play the race card when what we're trying to do is protect human beings' lives.
Yeah, I think the same thing is going on in just about every other major blue state in the country. It's not, I don't think, indigenous to just the city of Jackson, Mississippi, unfortunately. And there's another way, too, and I want to talk to you about this one. I noticed this morning we just mentioned about Lauderdale having the sobriety checkpoints out there, where checkpoints are, and I think there was a lawsuit to stop some of this, the stop and frisk and all of that. More with Mike Hurst. And I also want to talk to you about what you think of the Supreme Court getting the Jack Smith deal. And that's coming up. Song that never would have been recorded had GPS been there, first of all. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to Dionne Warwick. Do you know the way to San Jose? Well, was she, is she, Lance? 80-something years old, is she?
In the 80s. Y'all have to pull that one back up, yes.
I forget. It looks
83 or 86, one of those.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic.
And then Connie Francis is also still kicking, and we have her coming up. Her birthday is today also. One more thing on the crime situation, because we know what to do and how you handle this. It has to be done from a non-political sort, through the judicial system and everything else working together on this one. And I understand it's not easy, but we're just not even doing anything to get to that point. Kenny Stokes and others, as you've just alluded to, have to be out there calling for, pleading for, asking for a possible curfew. And I do not understand why that would be difficult. Is it racist, or is it how is it not a good idea when you've got a 13-year-old shooting people and carjacking with stolen weapons at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, when you have Kenny Stokes begging to enforce law, Paul, that should tell you how dire consequences we have. Is that right?
Good point.
There's so much that can be done. The curfews, you mentioned before the break, stop and frisk, the checkpoints. I mean, you go
What's the law on that one?
Well, I'm not going to bore your listeners with the law, but what I will tell you is, if you go back and look at stop and frisk in New York, for instance, in the I think it was the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, that cleaned up New York City, and the only reason they stopped that is because Mayor Bloomberg changed the policy after Rudy Giuliani and his broken windows approach to cleaning up New York, which worked, by the way. And now if you go back to New York and you see the crime has spiked, the vandals are back. I mean, it's becoming, again, a rundown city, sadly. But if we know what to do, you're exactly right. We absolutely know what to do. We let law enforcement do their job, make sure people's constitutional rights are protected, obviously, but we make sure that law enforcement, both police and prosecutors, do their job and citizens are protected. It's that simple. And going back to the city of Jackson, I hate to keep harping on this, but when I was U.S. Attorney, I looked at, the police force at the city of Jackson, and there was a commission, a study done by the city of Jackson. They hired a New York consulting group to do a study back in the late 90s, early 2000s. They found that in order to reduce violent crime in the city of Jackson, you need about 600 police officers. As you and I sit here today, Jackson Police Department has about 250 police officers.
Wow.
250. So they have less than half of what they need. So, one idea I just thought about this morning is, I understand that the legislature does not want to give the city of Jackson money because of this mayor and his woke leftist policies of, telling the police in Jackson you cannot pursue criminals. That's crazy. Telling, police in Jackson, if you were involved in an officer-involved shooting, we are releasing your name, the police officer's name, within 72 hours, irregardless of whether you've had any due process. That's crazy. But what the legislature could do is they could direct funds to the city of Jackson and put stringent requirements on it that you shall only use these funds to hire police officers. You shall only use these funds if you repeal the no pursuit policy. You can only accept these funds if you repeal the releasing officer's name. So we can do this, but we've got to put requirements on it. And I can tell you right now, the leftist mayor in the city of Jackson is not going to accept those funds, even though it will protect citizens.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. He wouldn't accept the funds. All the way back to when Trump wanted to come in and came into the civil rights museums and was snubbed there. It's not about the city. It's not about the future of this of the capital city. It's about politics, and that's sad.
Well, and you had some civil rights icons like Reuben Anderson, who was there and welcomed Trump, like Dr. John Perkins, who was there and his family was there, who suffered during civil rights and welcomed Trump. Some saw the office of the presidency higher than these crazy left-wing ideas to garner attention, like our mayor did, like the Jackson mayor, not our mayor, the Jackson mayor.
You get a little exasperated because you also understand at the end of the day, it has to do with the voters. The voters have got to understand where they are, and they are the ones that are going to have to make these changes. That's the only way this is going to happen, just to know a little bit about the policies and the direction that a new mayor wants to take the city. And a lot of things will change.
I agree.
But they've got to do it. They've got to educate themselves on the policies and the ideologies of the next mayor.
That's right.
Let's spend a little time on this one. Well, before I do that, though, stop and frisk, are they illegal? Because there was a Supreme Court ruling on this, and I don't remember what it was, but I do remember where they were doing a lot of stop and frisk, and they were in the nefarious parts of town. And because most of those high crime areas were African American, they ruled that they were racist. And I have no idea how that came out, but was that the ruling that kind of killed that? There was a
ruling. I can't recall right off the top of my head what it was, but yeah, you're right. There was a ruling that kind of knocked down stop and frisk, but it is not. There's still, Supreme Court case. I think it goes back to the 50s or the 60s. Terry, that still allows to stop and frisk. So it's not illegal to stop and frisk. But you're right. There was something. I think specifically. Critical of the New York policy that made the mayor just decide we're going to do away with it.
To me, that would be number 1 and 2. Number 1 would be to have a curfew, that anybody's out there that's underage, you can stop them. You have a reason to stop them there. If they mouth off to you while you're stopping me, that would be to get that objection out of the way. And secondly, to the stop and frisk. In the areas of town, regardless of their white, black, blue, what color, is if they're high crime rates or high crime areas, then that's the way that they are targeted. So we'll see what happens. Supreme Court has indicated it will expedite consideration of a petition. That petition is by Special Counsel Jack Smith on whether the former President Donald Trump can be prosecuted on charges he plotted to overturn the 2020 election. It seems like there's some landmines in here, and I'm a little confused if the Supreme Court's going to be considering, is this president himself, is there any immunity that comes with Trump or future presidents? Have you had a chance to look over this?
Yeah, very briefly. I haven't looked at the special counsel's actual filing, but I did read some reports on it. And the way it was reported was the special counsel was asking the Supreme Court to consider whether a former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution for crimes that he allegedly committed while he was in office. Now, to me, the extraordinary thing is the judge at the district court level, at the trial level, said, no, he is protected. Instead of appealing to the appeals court, which is normally what we do, the special counsel skipped the appellate court and went straight to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has now asked the Trump's legal team for responses to that by next week. So the Supreme Court appears to be taking this seriously, and it seems like they may realize. Were you a little surprised that they said, "Okay, we'll take this"? Yeah, I am actually. I am, because normally the Supreme Court, relies on its appellate court system to look at those cases, and to jump the appellate court is actually surprising.
And I guess they could have said, no, go back through the appellate court.
That's right,
and then.
And this case is set for trial in March, which I can't imagine it actually going to trial in March with everything that's required.
Yeah. The other part of this is if they rule a former president does not have full immunity on everything, that doesn't really the inference is that he might be guilty of this, and maybe Jack Smith is looking for the inference of that. Doesn't say anything about whether what he did in using this freedom of speech crossed that line. It's not an indictment on what he did, but more so, can a president be indicted.
Well, and Trump's legal team raised a good point, which is this is Smith's attempt to affect the 2024 presidential election. Because to your point, if the Supreme Court takes this up and says no, there is no immunity, he can be prosecuted. That filters down to the public that well, maybe he did do something wrong.
And at the same time, if you're looking for wrongdoings, there's plenty on the other side.
Well, and we can let's, if you don't mind. I mean, Hunter Biden's tax indictment is a perfect example. When I was an assistant U.S. attorney, I prosecuted all the tax cases in the Southern District of Mississippi. And to see that indictment come down, again, Paul, Special Counsel Jack Smith is going after Trump with both barrels, with everything he's got. And we, the people, the American people, these brave, IRS special agents had to come forward, testify in front of Congress just to get the Department of Justice and the tax division to do their darn job. It's amazing. And now when this indictment comes out and it alleges that Hunter Biden made $7 million over 4 years. $7 million over 4 years. And instead of paying taxes on that, he spent the money on things like $683,000 on women.
Oh, yeah.
On strippers and prostitutes.
We went over that. When you spent 4 times as much on prostitution than you have on health care, it's not good choices.
It's incredible. And looking at this indictment, I think he's done.
We got a final segment coming up in a moment or two. I want you to hear also just a quick clip on how the prosecuting or the defense attorney Abby Lowe, what's his last name?
Abby Lowe.
Lowell. Yeah. How he has addressed this. It's really a little bit comical. When we return right after. Back to the first gentleman of
House District 75.
House District 75 and the, let's see, Representative-elect. There we go, Celeste Hurst. Maybe she'll be a guest one day on the program.
That'd be great, man. I don't know if you can handle her, Paul. That's the problem.
Well, we'll call you in to be in the green room if that happens. Here goes Abby, the attorney, trying to do some groundwork for Hunter Biden prior to getting on the stand.
The fairness, justice, and decency in this. The charges in this new tax indictment talk about a period where Hunter was at the lowest ebb of his addiction. And like people in that regard, and I know everybody in America either has somebody in their family or friends who suffer from addiction, he certainly did things that he's not proud of. But wait, what happened since? He got himself sober in 2019. And he paid all of the taxes that are owed in this indictment more than 2 years ago with interest and penalties. Nobody in that position would be charged the way he was yesterday. Whoa. Nobody.
No, really? Really? You can do that on your own time? You can say, look, I'll wait till 2 years, then I'll pay the penalties and leave me alone now.
Yeah, that argument is like a bank robber being caught and given the money back and said nobody's charged with bank robbery if they give the money back. I mean, that's right. Crazy. Don't forget, Paul, Abby Lowell was the same attorney that this guy here in Mississippi called Paul Minor had defend him when Paul was prosecuted for bribing judges and convicted.
Oh, he's got a long list back to the beatnik days, I think.
You have to give him credit. I mean, he's trying to do his best in the media. So,
your final thoughts on where we're going with the situation of getting crime under control, though, and I know it's something that you were passionate about, and you were, and I felt this in the latter days and the latter interviews we did when your term was coming toward an end. That you were just frustrated because of so much you could have done.
Yeah, and look, I'm still eternally optimistic. I really am. I think with what the state legislature has done with the Capital Improvement District, the Capitol Police, trying to set up this new system that would actually enforce the law in Jackson, I think the state legislature, the governor, Sean Tindall at the Department of Public Safety, these individuals are trying to do what's right by Jackson, and instead they're being painted as racist, they're being painted as political, when all they're trying to do is enforce our law. So I still remain, maybe naive, but I remain optimistic that the work's going to be done. And I'll tell you, the new U.S. Attorney, Todd G., that has come in, I knew Todd when he was with the Public Integrity Section of the Department of Justice, and I think he's going to make fighting violent crime in Jackson a priority.
I think we've invited him or want to invite him, so if you have a contact with him, tell him to give us a call.
Absolutely.
Let's get him on. Couldn't you say the same thing about other cities beside Jackson, though? And I know Jackson is in the spotlight because they are the capital city and the largest. But, I mean, the crime is just out of control in Clarksdale. You look at some things going on in Meridian and Macomb and Brookhaven and a lot of other places in the state. And the same thing is happening as far as gangs are not indigenous, just Jackson,
No.
Batesville, Panola County area. It's all over. But if they did the same things.
Right. And what I would tell you is when I was U.S. Attorney, and I hate to keep saying that, but we took this Project Eject, and we started it in Jackson, obviously, because it was the worst crime rate in not only the state but now in the nation.
The murder capital of the world,
of the nation. But we took that idea and we moved it from Meridian. And we moved it to Natchez, and we moved it to other parts of the state that had Democratic mayors, and they welcomed us with open arms. They encouraged their police department to work with federal law enforcement, and because they did that, because it starts at the top with leadership in these local mayor-elected positions, it worked in those towns and those cities, and so you started seeing results in those areas. But when you don't have a mayor in a city that wants to do right by their citizens, when they don't want to enforce the law, when they don't want to have the back of the law enforcement, when they don't want to put money into hiring more police officers and enforcing the laws on the streets, you're gonna move backwards, and the people are going to be less safe.
Maybe it's just he's got to get to it. He's just got to solve the garbage situation.
Well,
first.
and the water situation, and the street light situation, and the pothole situation. I don't know what he does with his time. I mean, I hear he's always out of state rather than in the city of Jackson, but, who knows?
What do we got? Another 2 years or 3 years as far as his reign?
I'm not sure.
I think it's
and here's what I'll tell you, Paul. People in the city of Jackson are taking note. People in the city of Jackson are being fed up. I've talked to your grandmothers who are raising their grandkids. I've talked to individuals who are trapped in Jackson, and they want better. And so I hope those individuals rise up and elect some new leadership in Jackson.
The vast majority of people who are affected by this in a negative way are a vast majority of the people who voted for him.
That's right.
And they've got to just take stock of that.
That's exactly right.
Like as always, sir, it is a pleasure. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas to
Merry
you
Christmas.
and
Happy New Year.
the representative-elect.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, take care.
All right, more coming up.